Kate Cloud. I'm going to assume I'm a fourth grade teacher, and I'm getting ready to start the year. So before I can jump into expressions, I really want to make sure that I'm grounded in CAP. So I've gone into CAP, I've looked at my pacing guide, and I see, and my stage one, and I see that this unit for fourth grade is really about place value. Adding, subtracting, rounding, comparing, all within 1 million. So I've got my range, and I know that these are different skills that my students have to have by the end of the unit. Those were the big ideas that stood out to me. Once I have those big ideas, now I'm ready to jump into the resource. So I'm going to start, before I dig in and look at all the fun things to fill my buckets, I'm going to start just in the table of contents at the beginning of the unit. For this, I'm just going to start in big idea 1. Sometimes I look at the entire table of contents, but this first big idea is 5 lessons, and it seems like a really easy place to start to think about my classroom. So as I look at the table of contents, I see a few different things. I see a lot of place value, patterns, so I know that it's aligned to CAP, and I know that I'm in the right track and that all these lessons are good for my students. But what I notice is lesson 3 and lesson 5 have very similar titles. Lesson 3 says rounding numbers is the title, but the focus is to round and compare multi-digit whole numbers. Take a look at lesson 5, and it's compare and round. So I'm starting to think, well, wait a minute, rounding and comparing, it's mentioned twice now. This may be my opportunity to first start doing workshop with my kids because something is repeating. But I still don't have enough information to decide, so I'm going to jump in a little bit further. And I take a look at the activity focus. So this is found on the first page of every lesson, and it's in the blue. And for this, I snipped them so I could look at all of them together and just see what's going on in the lessons. Table of contents told me lessons 3 and lessons 5 were the same. But as I jump into the blue, I'm now seeing lessons 2 and lessons 4 are also the same. And I didn't notice that from my table of contents. So lesson 2 is identifying patterns in multi-digit whole numbers and reading and writing multi-digit whole numbers in standard form, word form, and expanded form. But so is lesson 4. So that might be a chance. And 3 and 5 match too. So now we've got 2 sets of lessons that are the same. And now I'm starting to see, oh, I might be able to start to do that workshop with my kids because it's going to be a review. I'm going to show them something, maybe lesson 2, and I'm going to come in lesson 4, and they're going to be able to do this independently. However, this is the first week of school because this is unit 1 with 4th grade. So we're still working on lots of behaviors. So I'm going to go ahead and focus on lesson 5. I'm going to give myself 4 lessons to get to know my kids, work on behaviors, and do all the fun first week things with them until I introduce workshop. So lesson 5 is that comparing multi-digit numbers to 1 million and using place value to round. So those are my 2 chunks of learning that expressions highlights. So then I'm ready to jump into the lesson. I've looked CAP, table of contents, and the activity focus. So my first activity, of course, tells me whole class, and I'm not quite sure that that's right for my kids because the first one is comparing numbers to 1 million, and based on lesson 3, my kids were great at it. They were doing awesome at comparing numbers. I don't need to be standing in front of the room again, teaching them to compare numbers. They showed me in lesson 3 that they've got it. So I'm going to take that, and that's going to be an activity. That's going to be part of my workshop. But as I looked through, I noticed that the on-level card was actually a game with dice for comparing numbers. So the worksheet that Expressions provides, I'm not going to do. It's just a worksheet. My kids are gonna be way more engaged when I do that on-level card. So that will be their station where they get to compare numbers. So right now I only have an activity, I still don't have my mini lesson. I just have an activity that kids are gonna engage in. So I go to the next one. Oh, goodness. All right, well, I'll talk through that second one for you. The second one, the second activity is actually on rounding numbers. Now, I've been in 5th and 6th grade, and this is my first year in 4th. However, I know rounding, estimating is so hard for my kids. It's just one of those skills that is really, really challenging for them. So while yes, I've done it in lesson 3, I want to do it again because their exit ticket that I gave them didn't show they knew how to round. They were getting there, but they still need me with some guidance and some modeling. So activity 2 is going to be my mini lesson on rounding. And I know that that's important from CAP, that they can round within 1 million, and there's a lot of different place values that they can round to there, so it's a big skill, and I want to make sure that I'm still doing my mini lesson. So my mini lesson is rounding. Their activity that they can do afterwards would then be comparing with the on-level card. But I know that I have kids that are gonna go, okay, got my rounding, okay, I compared, and that's only 20 minutes into their day, and they're gonna go, now what? Now what do I do? So I dug in a little bit deeper, and I found that I wanted to give some of that choice time. So my choice for today was the challenge easel. It was around rounding, and the homeschool activity, because I know I'm in the first week, but I already have a group that loves sports, and they're already talking about their fantasy football teams they're gonna do, and they're excited about their football team they're gonna be a part of. So I'm gonna use the homeschool activity where students are estimating the capacity of a sporting center. And then they get to go research and see how their estimate compared. At the end, I'm gonna pull all my students together and use a writing prompt as my exit ticket. So I'm gonna make sure, did my kids understand the mini lesson? And the writing prompt was explain how you can round a 6-digit number to any place and give an example. That's gonna tell me if they've got it, or if I need to come back and maybe it needs to be another bucket for my students. Maybe I need to do another mini lesson. But I'm gonna gather some more data to see, did they get it after day 2?
So throughout her Think Aloud, Julia showed that she was maximizing her instructional time. She wasn't just following what was in the book, she was meeting the needs of all of her students by adjusting what was in the book and responding to those needs. She was also thinking about the capabilities of the resource and pulling in items from her wish list that she knew she wanted to put in place. The way that Julia adjusted and thought through the lesson lends itself to this structure that was on your green sheet, where she has an opening, a mini lesson, a bank of choice time, and then closure. What questions do you have about that?